I'm Karen Forget, and I'm the director of Lynnhaven River Now, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight for our first 2021 forum for the candidates who are hoping to represent Virginia Beach in the Virginia General Assembly for the next 2 years. Before we get started this evening, we're going to take a moment to acknowledge the indigenous people who cared for this land before us. So Jim?
Yes, good evening. I'm Jim Deppie. And we like to start all of our meetings with an acknowledgement statement because we are only literally hundreds of yards from where the first Europeans came ashore in Virginia. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Algonquian-speaking people of the Powhatan Confederacy of Coastal Virginia, specifically the Chesapeake and the Nansemond tribes. They were careful stewards of these lands and waterways for thousands upon thousands of years before the arrival of Europeans, and they continue to live among us and guide us in the traditional caring for the land and the water. We are hopeful that these gatherings will help us to honor them and follow their example of stewardship.
Thank you, Jim. So you will be hearing from candidates from districts 21, 81, and 82 tonight. LRNow is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we have invited all of the candidates to join us tonight and do not ever endorse individual candidates. We feel strongly that protecting our land, air, and water should not be partisan issues. That said, only the Democratic candidates have chosen to participate tonight. We are sorry about that, and we continue to reach out to everyone who is interested in representing Virginia Beach and hoping that they will join us. We have prepared 8 questions, which we will ask first. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond, and we will mix up the order on each of the questions. Helen Coons, Morgan, do you want to take down the acknowledgement statement? There you go. Helen Coons will be our timekeeper. So please watch her for signals about how much time you have remaining. After we finish the prepared questions, we will take questions from the audience in the Q&A. So please take a moment right now to look at your computer screen or your iPad screen and find the Q&A box on your screen. It's probably at the bottom of your screen, but if you're on an iPad, you might find it in the top right corner. So please find that Q&A box, and that's where you will type in your questions. So just click on the Q&A box and you'll get a screen that pops up where you can type in your questions. And we'll take as many of those questions as we have time for. Please do not use the chat for your questions. After we finish the questions from the Q&A, we will give each of the candidates 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Lastly, we will be recording tonight's forum and making it available on our YouTube channel starting tomorrow. We'll also be sending it out through our social media networks and in our weekly email. So let's get started. The first question will be asked by Jim Deppie, LRNow's advocacy coordinator.
Good evening. Our first question is on resiliency, and the order of answering for this first question will be Kelly Convirs-Fowler, Jeffrey Feld, and Scott Flax in that order. So here's the question. Sea level rise, increasing rainfall, and flooding are the most pressing issues for the city of Virginia Beach. The City Council is proposing to borrow through general revenue bonds $567.5 million to address these issues across the city. What should the state government be doing to help cities and counties across the state, and particularly the coastal regions, most at risk? Kelly?
Thank you so much for that question. Resiliency is such an important issue, and to talk about the things in Virginia Beach is really important. I'm currently the vice chair of the Joint Subcommittee on Coastal Flooding, and these are issues that we're directly tackling. We've been taking presentations from stakeholders, we have to complete our report annually, and we're going to advise on policy. So this is very relevant to what we need to be focused on in the General Assembly. I forgot on time. As we all know, our area is the area with the military here, and when we think about protecting the Commonwealth, Virginia Beach is on the forefront. So as something that we're trying to figure out, and we would like input from the stakeholders, is because we are so important here in Hampton Roads and we need to stay above water, what can we ask for, especially in the budget, or what can we do to help get these projects going faster? So that's something that I would like to get the stakeholders input on soon, before session. That way we can make sure that we advocate for those things ahead of time. Oh, and if I have a couple seconds, I'm a big supporter of the the Resiliency Master Plan, and we're going to make a more resilient Virginia. And I know Hampton Roads is going to be kind of the root of all that. It's kind of the base of everything in the foundation, where we need to fix what we have here to be able to fix the rest of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Next, Jeffrey Feld.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Following on what Kelly was saying, the coastal master plan is ideal. We need to take care of that. But my opinion is, obviously you said that earlier that, the Democrats are here. I think it speaks loudly that the other representatives are not here. The incumbent in my position has been in position for at least a decade and doesn't really care about these issues. We need to invest in stormwater infrastructure design. We need to invest in pumps, planting trees to absorb water. Most people don't know that a single 100-foot tall tree can absorb 11,000 gallons of water in a single growing season. That's 11,000 gallons less that will flood someone's home and property during heavy storms. I personally have a big issue when developers in Hampton Road clear out huge tracts of land, including trees and foliage, just to build a house, and then plant saplings and fescue sod, which doesn't even come close to replacing the native grasses and the ecosystem. We need tall grass area to slow down a storm surge, as well as act as a barrier. Another thing we can do is be intentional about what plants we put on city property. And it's important that we promote native ecosystems to be good stewards of the environment. And that should be good with my time then, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. And next, and finally, Scott Flax.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I think in this question, I think Kelly's right to look at the Resilience Master Plan. There's 4 guiding principles, as many of you all know. One is acknowledging climate change. Every candidate that was on the forum today acknowledges that climate change is a real issue that's going to affect us here in Hampton Roads and throughout the country and throughout the world, really. We got to identify and address the social, economic inequities and work to enhance those. So when we're making these resiliency plans, we can't just focus on the north end of the beach, but we got to focus on every community and many of the communities that we have ignored in previous plans and focuses. We also have to do this both from a citywide, a regional wide, and a statewide. As a person who's grown up here, I've seen many times us talk about regionalism and hoping that Hampton Roads all works together. That has to happen when we're dealing with the resiliency plan. That's got to happen both on a statewide and a local level. And I think that's what's important. I think when you have delegates who are all going to work together as a team and can be a strong voice for Hampton Roads, I think that's also a strong thing that we need to do.
Thank
For
you.
the second resiliency question, I'll turn it over to Karen.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks to our candidates. So we just heard from you regarding what your thoughts about what the state should be doing regarding resiliency, how the state can be helping the cities with flooding, but individuals are also very much impacted by flooding issues. And we're learning recently expected sharp increases in flood insurance costs. So what should the state be doing, or can the state do to help individuals whose properties are at risk of flooding? And for this question, we'll start with Jeffrey.
Yeah, I mean, the right now we have a lot of programs. We have a grant program that can help out. A lot of people don't take advantage of that. The grant program is from the VA Department of Forestry, and that helps out and promotes us planting good ecosystems. It helps out the urban and rural areas. It also gives money to the local governments so they can have more of a say of what's happening, as well as nonprofit, to promote the sustainable ecosystem in those environments. My opponent doesn't take any of those environmental issues seriously. I do, and that's why I'm asking for everybody's support. But individually, we can do a lot of other things, making sure we plant the right grasses, don't kill trees that are healthy and viable, move the tree. So there's a lot of things that we can do with that. But I'm the first one to admit whether I know everything on a subject or not. And I don't know everything on the subject. I want to be educated more. And I want people to reach out to me and tell me their thoughts and opinions, but we need to do better.
Thank you. Scott Flax.
I think in dealing with the ongoing flooding issue, we got to focus on what we can do in regards to flood insurance and how we can best help people, whether it's dealing with the federal flood insurance program or maybe creating one that's better focused here in Virginia. I think those private insurances are good for the people who can afford it, but there has to be a safety net. You know, when people just built their homes or bought their homes, they didn't always plan for 50 years down the road. And I think as a state, we got to make sure that we protect all those homes, even the ones who aren't able to protect themselves, or the homeowners who aren't able to protect themselves in regards to flood insurance. I think, to me, that's where the state can help out, make sure there's that safety net.
Thank you, Scott. And Kelly, Convirs-Fowler.
Thank you. I appreciate the follow-up. I think I can, okay, minute and a half. I would say the Coastal Resiliency Plan, the master plan, is going to really guide us in some of this and what will really help figure out where we need to fine tune and kind of focus in. But assisting homeowners with raising their homes, incentivizing people to look inland, increasing education, also the bond, the funding is one of the biggest things, and passing that bond, that local bond. So again, it kind of all goes together with education, where people just need to understand what we need. And that master plan, I know I keep going back to it, but I'm a huge fan of it, is going to help us figure out where the priorities are and what the main focuses are. So you guys already said a lot of it, so I just had to sum it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And we'll go to Jim for our third question. Jim, you're muted.
Our third and final resiliency question has to do with the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. Virginia's membership in RGGI has brought unprecedented funding for flooding resilience in Virginia, and the first two quarterly auctions have contributed $80 million to the Community Flood and Resilience Fund. How do we ensure that these funds continue to be available for cities and counties throughout the state?
Well, I'm going to assume it's me first and then keep going down the line. One, we protected by statute, and we are protected by legislation, and we do not allow anyone else to dip into those funds. There's a reason why we create those funds like RGGI, and we have those resources available. And we got to make sure that those resources remain there for those reasons and not spend them anywhere else, not say, oh, we need this, this money here or this money there. So I think, again, making sure that what we plan for those monies is that's where they actually go.
And Kelly, you're next.
Absolutely. Scott, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what we need to be doing. The oversight, we have considered the oversight board. That is one thing that has been brought up. Also, community engagement. We really need to bring in the community and make sure that everybody is heard, make sure that everybody understands. I think the more that we move forward, people see that this is working. This is part of the master plan. This is part of what is things are doing, that it's making things better. We're not going to solve climate change. We're not going to solve our problems here with flooding, but as we fix them, as we move forward and make sure that we plan accordingly, it's all going to be helpful. So I'll leave some for Jeff. Thank you.
I'll take it from right there. I don't need to be introduced again. It's great. We all think alike and we all have the same views because it matters to all of us. These are issues that are pinnacle. So I believe too in engaging the community. When we educate the community and let them know of what's going on with this and how the money has been spent, they can actually see firsthand what it has done and how it has improved some people's lives. And hopefully they go, wait, I want to participate in that as well. And so therefore we can continue the good work with that and be good stewards. And, you know, having the independent oversight, and I hate using this phrase, but, you know, keeping those funds in a lockbox. It is only per statute by law to be used for these purposes. That's it. No borrowing to pay for it later. It stays there and you pay for it now as we go.
Over to you, Karen.
Thank you. So earlier, Jeffrey mentioned the value of trees, and that's what our fourth question really focuses on. So trees are an important part of controlling flooding, as well as improving air and water quality and beautifying our neighborhoods. Our tree canopy statewide and in Virginia Beach is declining. Should the state try to reverse this trend? And what could the state legislature do? And do you support giving localities more authority or keeping the state caps in place? And that's referring to development scenarios where currently there are state caps on what the locality can require in tree preservation of a developer. So we will begin with Kelly Convirs-Fowler.
We just lost Kelly for just a second.
Oh, okay.
This
Yeah.
happened once before, so I'll
Okay.
bring her back.
All right, we'll start with Jeffrey Feld and then we'll jump
Sure,
to
no
Kelly.
problem. Personally, it bothers me when a large, healthy, mature tree is destroyed without financial consideration. I just personally don't understand why why you can't move the tree. You know, it absorbs so much water, provides shade, habitat to birds, insects, lovely squirrels, a little sarcasm there. So I don't know why it's not a viable option. We no longer have to kill a well-established tree, plant saplings that are never really a good replacement. I think it's one of the many reasons why the Sierra Club endorsed me. I think by having the state mandates and the cap, I think to allow the localities to make a more stringent and more dutiful on the localities is fine. To relax those state mandates and cap, I'm not in favor of that. So hopefully that kind of got you the nutshell of my position and view on that, but it's pretty cut and dry. You know, we need to do better, and we really haven't been for many, many years. And that's why we're trying. That's why we're here. We're participating in this talk for everybody to see because we care.
Thank you, Jeffrey Feld. And we'll go to Scott Flax.
You're muted.
You're muted.
There I go.
There you go.
You would think all of us would be so familiar with Zoom, we wouldn't have that problem at this point.
I know.
So the question is, should the state try to reverse this trend, and what can the state legislature do? And of course, we should reverse this trend. I mean, destroying the tree canopy and the coverage that the trees do for us, it's not just a flooding issue, it's a temperature issue. They help to control, besides the flooding that's going to occur, are increasing temperatures. The trees also help with all of those things. So of course, we should reverse this trend. What can the legislatures do? We can create more grant programs. We can look at and encourage landscape and urban planning, and making sure that we are building and with trees in mind and with the forestry in mind. The city, Virginia Beach has a plan. I had them come out when I was the president of the Philly Civic League and talk about what they want to do. Now we need to make sure that it's funded and it's encouraged to do, not just in Virginia Beach, throughout Hampton Roads. It is something that we have to do. And what you do is give the cities the authority to put caps, and make sure that, and Doc's right, Jeffrey's right, to make it astringent. You know, if the localities want to make it harder, that's fine. We just can't relax those issues. The state can create the baseline, but each locality knows what they need in their area.
Thank you, Scott. And it looks like Kelly's having some technical problems, so we'll go on to question 5, and we can jump back to Kelly on this question when she is able to rejoin. So Jim?
Sure. Question 5 has to do with single-use plastics. And as a little bit of background, the state of Maine just passed an extended producer responsibility bill. Oregon has one on the governor's desk, and California and New York have one in the bills in the works as well. So the dominoes are rolling. Producers and fast food restaurants depend almost entirely upon single-use packaging and beverage containers while assuming zero responsibility for litter cleanups, recycling, and waste disposal. What is your position on instituting a producer responsibility program in Virginia, which holds producers accountable for their single-use plastics?
Am I leading off, or is Jeffrey leading off?
Yeah, hang on, I'll tell you. Scott, you're first.
Okay. I'll be honest, I don't know much about the producer responsibility program, but that makes perfect sense to me. These people who are creating the more plastics in our environment, or these single-use plastics, should be held accountable and should help encourage the cleanups, the recycling, and waste disposable. So that plan seems to make sense to me. I also believe in expanding Executive Order 77, which the governor put in place, which curb the reliance on single-use plastics in both of all throughout the executive branch, including our colleges. I think we should, or state-run colleges, I think we should make sure that happens and filters all the way down. If we teach that in elementary schools that they shouldn't be using single-use plastics, teaching that knowledge to our youth will help filter its way up and do it better for the environment as well.
And Jeffrey, you're next.
Yeah, I echo that. Producer responsibility program is a great program. I would like to see it more incentivized within the community. For example, you have certain areas that have a 5-cent charge for a soda pop can or bottle, and then they incentivize you to return it. I have no problem increasing that. I know Maine was one of the first ones doing that, and the country took over, and a lot of localities have that as well. I don't believe in banning single-use plastics overnight, but again, encourage it a phase-out plan. We need to help provide businesses the sanitation tools to bring back reusable products in the service industry, but also get them to phase it out. We need to invest in better alternatives like hemp plastic, which is biodegradable, bamboo products. I also applaud Governor Northam when he signed the executive order to phase out non-reusable plastics. These are all things that we need to keep pushing with the momentum that we have and not slow down. Because if we do, then we're going to have landfills that we're going to have a whole bunch of mound trash moors in the area and a whole bunch of other issues that are going to affect not only my children, everybody else, all the listeners' children, but their grandchildren, children beyond that. So we need to do a little better.
So Kelly, welcome back. I don't know if you can see the question or not, but it has to do with extended producer responsibility. And there it is right there. Maine just passed one. Oregon has one on the governor's desk for signing. And we're wondering what your position is on a producer responsibility program in Virginia.
Oh, absolutely. That right off the bat, I can say that is something we support. Yes, I know that right now with the pandemic, things are a little rough with takeout food, with things like that. So it is something that completely agree. I think I came in on, and I apologize, my Wi-Fi, I don't know what happened, but I'm back. And I did hear someone, I think it was Jeffrey, say something about the pandemic and the phase in. And I think that especially with the pandemic right now, we need to really prioritize what can be done right now, what can we phase in, and just be kind of reflective in that way, and reflective as we go. Can we do more? Do we need to scale back? But because again, it cannot be done overnight. It will take years to really kind of get this to where it needs to be.
Thanks, Kelly. And I think before we go to question 6, we're going to circle back to a question on trees that we missed your response on. So in last year, and I'll just sum it up, in last year's General Assembly, a bill passed in both the Senate and the House that would have given localities greater authority in requiring the preservation of trees in development scenarios. That bill was like put on hold. I know that's not the correct legal term, but it was put on hold basically. And a commission was set up to study it throughout the year. That commission is bringing back recommendations, and then the bills are going to come back. So our question is, should the state try to reverse the trend of loss in tree canopy, both statewide and in Virginia Beach? And what can the state legislature do to reverse that trend? And do you support giving localities more authority, or support keeping the state caps in place?
Thank you. I was really proud, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer, but I was really proud to support Delegate Guy's bill last year, during this year. It feels like last year, this year's legislative session, giving localities the ability to exceed the general requirement in its replacement and conservation ordinances, I think is extremely impactful for recurrent flooding. And I'm sure that's been covered in the previous answers, but other initiatives and policies and legislation that we could support increasing tree planting in low income and insufficient tree canopy areas to reduce heat island impacts. There's several things we could be doing, adding tree replacement requirements for developers. And so I am for whatever legislation comes out of this commission. I really like the commissions and the studies and when the stakeholders come back to the table and say this is a problem, we want to fix it. And we're able to bring the experts in and tell us exactly what we need to do, because not all of us are biologists and scientists. I know my husband has a biology degree, so he can answer a lot of these questions for me. And we have a lot of conversations about resiliency, actually. And he helped me learn very quickly, as well as Lynn Haven River Now. You guys did an excellent job getting me up to speed as soon as I was elected. Thank you so much for that. So I hope to continue being an advocate in that way.
Thank you, Kelly Fowler. And now we'll go to our second question on plastics. So that's question 6. In Virginia, bottles and cans account for nearly 22% of all litter. In states with beverage container deposit programs, bottles and cans average only 8.6% of the total litter. Not only reducing litter, but increasing recycling, reducing energy use, and curbing greenhouse gas emissions. Some of us are old enough to remember when every state had a bottle bill. What is your position on establishing a statewide beverage container deposit program, often referred to as a bottle bill? And on this one, let's start with Scott Flax.
I would be supportive of this. I think it does do all the things that we've talked about: reducing energy use, curbing greenhouse gas emissions, and recycling. I think the more that we can do to encourage people to be good stewards of the earth is what we should be doing.
Thank you, Scott Flax. And we'll go to Jeffrey Feld.
Yeah, I kind of set you guys up for this question, right? It's something that is very, simple to do. For those who don't believe in taking care of the environment, then fine, then pay your money and someone else will get the items and pick it up and get the funds that you want to waste. Myself, I remember before this started, and we would literally have a bag in our garage and put all our bottles in it. And my father and we would go to the food stores and put it in there and spin around, and have to read the barcode and give us our little piece of paper. And we'd have to go inside and get it. That's a great memory I had. Not going inside the room that smelled, because it had all the products still in it, but it taught me a valuable lesson of we needing to recycle. I've been through my education. I'm a podiatrist by trade, whether it's New York, it's West Virginia, it's Illinois. I've been all over the country. And in my personal experience, localities that have this type of a plan, it works. So if we know it's going to work, then yes, I know I'm in a long answer to give yes, I support it, but yes, I support it.
Thank you, Jeffrey Feld. And Kelly Convirs-Fowler.
Well, Jeff, you made it easy for me. I agree as well. This is a pretty easy question. It's just, this is a problem. Here's how we can solve it. And do you support it? And I believe we all do. Whatever we can be doing will be helpful. I know with my 3 daughters, I want to leave a world for them where they don't have to worry about the flooding, and they don't have to worry as much about the greenhouse gas emissions that are they live near, but I know we don't necessarily, but we see the results of it. So I just want to leave a better world for the next generation. And yes, I support it. I don't need a minute and a half to say that though.
Thank you, Kelly. It may be an easy question, but not necessarily easy to get it through the General Assembly. That takes a lot more work.
Yeah, I know. We'll work on it.
But Karen,
I would
you
love to
have 3
patron it.
individuals. You have 3 individuals on your screen right now that are willing to fight for that.
Yes,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Jeffrey. And so for our 7th question, we'll go to Jim.
So this question is on funding. Budget initiatives are taken up at the end of the session and often negotiated behind closed doors. How do we ensure that state funds important to our city are a priority, such as Stormwater Local Assistance Fund, or commonly referred to as SLAF, and Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, or VCAP? And let's start with Kelly. You were just up. Let's put you up again.
No, that's perfect. Thank you for the question. Okay, sorry, I always see the timer. I have fought for SLAF funding on the floor of the General Assembly, and it's really astonishing to watch people vote against it, especially those that experience the same flooding in our locality or in Hampton Roads in general. I know that these things are done, and I've learned a lot about the political process just very quickly, and it really does matter. And I think since I've been such an advocate from the beginning, it really does help, because when it comes around to priorities and the speaker and the leader, and we're talking about this ahead of time before session, the first thing I say is flooding. And I'm kind of known as flooding Fowler. That's all my caucus knows me to talk about sometimes. They know I'm going to get up, and they always kind of look to me because I'm just going to keep banging the drum. And I know it's been 1.5 years of a lot of distraction, but it's still on the forefront and it's still a priority. So just know that we're still fighting for those funds. And as the session approaches and they ask me again, and the higher up in seniority I've gotten, I'm going to keep banging the drum. And I really expect to bring home some good funds for flooding this year.
Jim,
You're next.
Okay. I mean, it's very easy to follow, either Kelly or Scott, because we all have very similar views. But the Stormwater Assistance Fund basically provides matching grants to local governments for just the planning, design, and hopefully implementation of BMPs, best management practices. All right. These funds are a matching program. All right. We should continue to fund this. All right. Anybody who owns lands, anybody who has farm property, anybody who eats food that was grown on a farm, they should be interested in this. All right. Because if we don't, we're still going to get flooding. You're talking about, from a price standpoint, foods are going to keep on increasing. It's cheaper in the short term for the long term to spend the money now, especially when there's a matching program, to help localities take this on the lead. And down the road, we're not going to have all those expenses. So from a financial aspect, we should be able to do that. And so when I'm in the House of Delegates, that's what I'm going to help out with. I'm going to help out Kelly Fowler. I'm going to help out Scott Flax and everybody else who's there, because I want to work with the leaders in Chesapeake and Virginia Beach to make sure that they're taking full advantage of this fund as well as the conservation program.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for that. Scott, over to you. Scott, over to you. There you go.
So the question is, how do we ensure that state funds important to our city are a priority? You elect the right people. You've heard Kelly, you've heard Jeffrey, and I'll say too, of course, we need to make sure that the Stormwater Local Assistance Fund and Virginia Conservation Assistance Program is funded. But the way that you ensure that, Lynn Haven River Now and everyone who's listening, is you make sure you elected people who actually believe in it, who actually believe that global climate change is real, who believe in that we're going to continue to have coastal flooding. That is the key. That's how you ensure that those state funds important to our cities that we live in are brought down to here. You elected people who actually care.
Before we go to our final question, I want to remind our participants that you can type any questions that you have in the Q&A box, and then we'll try to address those after we finish this one final question. So please use the Q&A and type your questions in on any topic. It doesn't necessarily have to be an environmental question. So any topic of interest to you. And our last question is, question 8 is about the Albemarle-Pamlico watershed. So Virginia has been a leader in Chesapeake Bay restoration work. This work has been a model for watershed restoration. However, 66% of Virginia Beach and 25% of Virginia are in the Albemarle-Pamlico watershed. So how do we get equitable attention and funding at the state level for the Albemarle-Pamlico watershed? And we'll start with Jeffrey Feld. I think, Jeffrey, your entire district is in the Albemarle-Pamlico watershed.
That is correct. But once I'm elected, I'm not just representing the 81st district, I'm representing everybody in the Commonwealth, all right? And that's why these elections are so important. So let's talk about this specific question, all right? This area, all right, it faces challenges from climate change, sea level rises, increased precipitation, and larger and longer lasting storms. The toxins and bio-waste stored in the floodplains, the potential uranium mining, increasing demands for groundwater from shrinking aquifer, these all need to be improved for a lot of my constituents, which would be for their farming practices. All right. So we need to restore and rejuvenate this. And just because it covers 25% of Virginia's land mass doesn't mean that we should skirt the responsibility of taking care of this. So in regard to having the equitableness of it, just like equitable education is important to me, if we as a state and a Commonwealth feel that there's a problem, and a lot of us do, then we will find the way to get this accomplished. And if I need to champion with somebody or do it on my own, this is a priority and we need to get the funds, put it to the side, and only use it for these issues.
Thank you, Jeffrey Feld. We'll go to Scott Flax.
I think one of the things that we can do here to help increase the equitable attention funding for the watershed is education. You know, is make sure people, when you hear Albemarle and Pamlico, you think North Carolina and you don't think Virginia or a Virginia problem, but it is. And I think that's one of the things that I think it's the best way to get the attention that it needs is to make sure that we recognize that this is a Virginia problem, both being caused by us and it has an effect if it goes bad. So I think that's where we are able to get the funding, is making sure that everyone throughout the state understands that and that our local constituents understand that.
Thank you, Scott. And we'll close with Kelly Convirs-Fowler.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be able to talk about this on the forum. I've been working on this for 2 sessions now and trying to get this study going with Lynn Haven River now. As an educator, a prior educator, and I still bring that into everything I do every day, I know the importance of knowing where we're at and knowing all the information and all the data before we can do anything else. And when the Albemarle-Pamlico watershed, I always struggle over that one. When that study, when we get that done, we're going to have all that information to be able to create policy and to be able to refer back to when we're kind of implementing these things. So just think about it, having the land use data, having the demographic data, stormwater related data, maps with the agriculture, just having everything in front of us. Even the groundwater data is important when you think about this is a holistic picture. And so this is just the one step to really getting, again, I go back to that master plan, but that part of that master plan. So I look forward to 2022 and again, making this a priority and getting this study going and done.
Thank you, Delegate Fowler. And we have one question in the Q&A, and I encourage other people to add questions. The question we have is, will each of you support the repeal of the right to work, in parentheses, for less law? And we can start with whoever, Jeffrey Feld.
Yeah, I mean, right to work is a great phrase. It sounds really good, but you got to think of who's being hurt by it. Okay, I'm an employer. All right, I run multiple offices, so I'm a small business owner. All right, I take care of my employees. All right, I provide them a good, fair wage. I give them extra time. I do bonuses. I give them time off to do what they want. All right, but we need to make the Commonwealth get away from this lovely, catchy phrase of right to work, when realistically that is impeding people from getting fair wages. All right, that's why I'm endorsed by the AFL-CIO. I'm endorsed by a whole bunch of other organizations. I don't care who I'm endorsed by. I hope the listeners out there are going to endorse me. So, to nutshell of Mr. Staples' question, yes, I will champion that, to repeal that. Yes.
Scott?
At this time, I'm not for the repeal for right to work. I'm for the strengthening our workforce, whether it be paid family leave, increasing minimum wage to $15. But at this time, I'm not for the repeal for right to work.
Kelly Convirs-Fowler.
I heard your question, but I think you said a right to work for less, and I wasn't
Well,
sure.
he put in parentheses for less. Will each of you support the repeal of the right to work law is the basic question.
Yes. Okay. So I think I understand. I think it was okay.
That was editorializing on the part of
Yes. No. It makes sense. So it's a complicated topic, and again, I think Jeff's right, and Scott, you guys bring good perspective to this, but what you were saying about it being the marketing on right to work, when I just talk about workers and having the right to advocate for themselves and collectively come together and for their rights, I absolutely 100% agree. Whatever you want to call that is up to you. I kind of wish we would stop saying that, like repeating that phrase, if because it kind of feeds into that it's a negative to take it away. It's negative to take away a right. But what it is it's denying workers the opportunity to come together and advocate for themselves. So if there's a way we can somehow change that, I'm not trying to change the entire system, Jeff, but maybe we can. I think that answers the question, because I don't think for less was part of it. That was just an editorial. Okay.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And maybe a follow-up would be whether you would support a state minimum wage increase.
Oh, I already have. So we've already done the steps to the $15 minimum wage. And I'm proud of that. I know it will definitely help working families. I'm sorry, did I jump in?
That's okay. Go ahead.
Definitely want to do everything we can for working families. And we've already raised the minimum wage, but we kind of need to look at other things now. We need to look at healthcare. We need to look at the ways that the jobs, the careers, what am I looking for? Human resources. Sorry, I just jumped right in. This could maybe a collective answer, guys. So maybe you guys could help me, because I just jumped in too quickly. I was excited to answer.
It's okay. But I mean, it's an exciting chance where we have to do if we all get elected, right? There's lots of avenues that we can do to help the workforce. I was just with Speaker Filler the other day, and it's one of her main focuses is helping the workforce. And we can do that with paid family leave. As I said, I think all of us are in favor of increasing the minimum wage. I know there's right now it's supposed to get to 15, but it has to get reinstated to do. And I think we're all in favor of doing that.
Jeffrey, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I like hearing myself talk, so I might as well say something. But yeah, I agree with what they just both said. It's also one thing that we need to do that wasn't mentioned is we need to educate workers when they're transitioning from, non-clean energy to good clean energy. We need to help transition that and give them those opportunities. But education is important. We also need to find, a fair livable wage that's good not only for employees, but also good for employers. not everybody is part of a company that is a mega company, you know, the Walmarts, the Amazons of the world. We have to look out for the small business owners. We need to take care of them so they find a way that they can still be competitive in the area, but also offer the same services on a level playing field. So maybe we should start talking about some of the conversation should also be about not giving so many big corporation tax breaks. All right, maybe give it to the small companies. I know that's on a tangent, but I'm using that because Kelly and Scott used a lot of the information on what I believe in. So I'm kind of throwing the little bits on the ends for us.
Thank you, Jeffrey. We don't have any other questions in the Q&A. We still have a few more minutes if anybody wants to add a question. Jim, did you have any follow-up questions that you wanted to ask or any topics we didn't hit on?
Actually, no, I'm pretty good. If I have a second, I would like to ask about the notion of a bill that was passed in last General Assembly about advanced recycling, which is absolutely a misnomer. It's chemical conversion of plastics with very little information behind it. I think it was actually transitioned into a study bill, or there will be a study bill going forward this year to try to get a handle on that idea. But you know, the bill was passed. The history of advanced recycling and around the country is kind of a sordid tale. There's no science behind what happens in this chemical conversion process in terms of toxic gas emissions and the downstream plume from those and the opportunity for a cancer alley idea. So I just wondered if you know about advanced recycling, it's actually chemical conversion, and what your thoughts are about reining that in.
If I could,
Yes.
if I remember, this was Delegate Plum's bill.
Yes.
And I remember there was a lot of debate about it. And I would really look forward to more information, because what you just said really kind of simplified a lot of the concepts that, you know, when we go around in caucus, you know, we have a lot of voices, and it definitely sparked a lot of conversation. So I remember it offhand, which is interesting because there's so many bills. So I would love to talk more about that. But I do remember the bill, and I do remember the controversy that went on in the bill. I just wanted to make that point.
And just to throw on that, you know, I do not like using chemicals that we do not know what the effects are going to be on people, wildlife for generations to come. You can look at the same thing as chemical fracking. All right. There's a lot of chemicals inside when they're pushing the water down, and that is damaging the ecosystem. So I would like to get more information on this. I'm glad that Jim, you said it was turned into a study versus being enacted. But just from the little bit of information that I'm getting, I'm not in favor of that.
I have to correct myself. It was passed for one facility, but I think a bill that's going to be going up this year is going to be called something like chemical conversion accountability, and that will give the General Assembly an opportunity to put the brakes on and study it the way it should be studied. Scott, do you have anything?
I think the key on bills like that is making sure you go to the resources to have greater knowledge. You know, we talked about this very briefly at the very start of this. We all come from different backgrounds. You know, Jeffrey Feld's a podiatrist. Kelly has been an educator and is a real estate. I'm a lawyer. You know, knowing about this is not something that I have any basis of knowledge for. So we can't just pass bills without going back to the stakeholders, trying to get as much information as possible. So I think it's great. That's why we have resources like Lynn Haven River Now. We need to make sure when elected that we come back to use you guys.
I'll piggyback and say that we need to make our sessions longer. We can't do this. When this happens and it's such a complicated topic, it's not fair to the topics and the stakeholders and to the community and just our Commonwealth. And I know that's a very big lift, but I'm putting the bug in everybody's ear. That's really our sessions are 30 days and 60 days, and we just conveniently extend 1 to 45. So just putting that bug out there.
Thank you. And we don't have any other questions. Helen, did you have anything that you would like to ask?
Certainly. I have worked most of my career as an environmental educator, and I work across the state with organizations that are supporting environmental educators. But the state has underfunded environmental education historically, and within the last 8 years actually did away with the Office of Environmental Education. A lot of the environmental education that happens with our public school children and families that may go to parks, this education is undervalued and underfunded. Would you support funding for environmental education across the state?
Absolutely. I definitely would. I am married to a teacher. I deal with residents at EVMS. My mother, my sister are teachers, both retired. So education is very important to me. So thank you for your service. And yes, I would support getting funding to do that. We need to be loud, all right? People who are concerned about these subjects need to be loud. We need to make, as Kelly has heard many times, good trouble. We need to be the squeaky wheel, all right? We need to have and share with social media and get people who have this passion elected to office so we can champion this cause. Because without doing that, you know, there's just politicians who are going to move on. They don't think it's important until one day they go, oh, you know, look, my water is black or brown or red or some other color, and they start getting sick. That's when they care, just like people who are, you know, in the hospitals and they have problems, you know, about to be put on a ventilator, and they say, oh, can I get a shot now? It's a little too late. So education is the best thing that we can do for every subject matter, but we need to be louder on these issues.
Thank you.
I agree. I would look to the best approach. I think bringing education in. I know there's some national groups that are associations for like science teachers and things like that. I'm not sure of the actual ones, but bringing them in for best approach would be appropriate, and just try to figure out, would that department that you mentioned I didn't know about, would that department be worthwhile to get back in place? But prioritizing education in our environment, there's nothing better for our future and our children than doing those two things together. So it would be extremely worthwhile, and just what approach we take. Again, you've got willing candidates here to take that on. So
Thank you. I'm going to ask one closing question, and then we'll go to your closing statements. So a lot of the progress that we have made in the last 4 years on resiliency particularly has been through executive action, executive orders. So there's a, you know, I think a well-founded concern that no matter who wins the election on November 2nd, that with a new administration, some of these, the progress that we've made will be hard to maintain. So how do you see us being able to maintain progress on especially resiliency issues in a new administration? And anybody can start.
I think I'll kick it off, because it's always easier to go first in this crowd than the last, because everyone has good thoughts. It's, again, you know, the three of us, we're going to do all of those things. We're going to continue to push for resiliency. Every topic that we've talked about tonight, and I think a lot of what you're saying now is a lot that's been done by executive action. The three of us, we're all going to continue to push and fight for those causes. And I think that's what you get if you elect us, whether you live in the 21st, the 81st, or the 82nd. That's what you're getting when you elect us.
Kelly or Jeffrey, would you like to jump in on that one?
I agree.
Okay. How about Kelly?
I was so distracted by just realizing that we had Feld, Flax, and Fowler that we need to like capitalize on that. I got distracted for a moment. Environmentalist Feld, Flax, and Fowler. I just need to find a better way to say it. This is a great interaction. I do wish we had more opportunity to have opponents here to be able to really kind of show the differences, because maybe there are some, maybe there aren't. We just need to know what they are. That way voters know what to do. And I know that I'm always going to put the environment first. And when I think about what would happen if the administration changes, I don't like to think about that. But if we had to think about that, I would say that we're going to need advocates like me who have been there and who have a track record and who have that voice already there, because it would be really hard, really difficult and challenging if I wasn't to win and then they were to try and take it on, because they're brand new. So I've laid a lot of the groundwork for you guys. So we're going to just go in there and just be able to kind of make everything move after that, right?
Thank you all. And we do have one other comment in the Q&A. Thank you to all the candidates who attended this forum. Their time and attention to the issues are appreciated. So I appreciate that comment too. And we'll go to the closing statements. So each of you have 2 minutes or so to do a closing statement, and then we'll call it a wrap. So we can start with Delegate Kelly Fowler.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know how long I can keep my children quiet. So I will go ahead and go. I'm Kelly. For anyone who's watching this later, I'm Kelly Fowler. I'm delegate in the 21st District, running for re-election in November. And I want to thank Karen, Helen, Lynnhaven River Now, Jim, for your work in Lynnhaven on the issues and with Lynnhaven River Now. I've been looking forward to this one, this is one of enjoyable forums to be able to talk through these issues, because they're so important across the Commonwealth, but especially here in Virginia Beach. It's just our top issue, and especially in the 21st District. So my constituents went through, and as well as others, went through Hurricane Matthew and were just devastated. And there are 4 districts that actually collide right in Windsor Woods. And that's exactly where our interconnected ponds are going. There's just a lot going on with flooding in the middle of the city, and there's several districts that are there. So that's why it's important to have advocates there. Thanks. I think Hurricane Matthew, though, was the turning point where it's enough is enough. And now we're having these increasingly heavy storms, recurrent flooding, the sea level rise. And finally, I think people are at the point where enough is enough. I'm grateful to the constituents of the 21st District that have believed that I was the best woman for the job to advocate on their behalf and to really be their voice. So I'm proud of the funding I've secured, the policies I voted for, the roundtables, the community engagement. And in closing, I want everyone to know I'm a steadfast supporter, listener, and follower of science and the experts. And I look to Lynnhaven River Now, no pressure, and all of our environmental stakeholders as a resource on these issues. So especially here locally. So you can count on me. Please, I need to count on your vote. Thank you so much, Helen, for keeping me on track. I appreciate that.
Jeffrey Feld.
Yeah. Thank you very much, first and foremost, Lynnhaven River Now, for the invitation, and for those who are watching and even participated with your comments and your questions. Thank you very much for your interest. I am Jeffrey Feld. I am running to represent you as the next delegate for the 81st District. My wife and I, we lived here in Hampton Roads for nearly 20 years. We have 3 school-age children that attend Virginia Beach Public Schools. My lovely wife is a teacher, as I mentioned earlier, so I have a personal stake in improving our schools and supporting our public school system. I believe that we must keep on pushing for improvements in our community through equitable education, opportunity, and investments in the local business, as well as being good stewards with our environment. With your support through social media, donations, or with volunteering, we can protect the environment, help public schools in an equitable way, grow businesses and agricultural opportunities, and enact common sense laws for the betterment of the residents of this Commonwealth. Thank you again for having me. And if anyone out there has any questions, they can reach out to me at my webpage or Facebook, and I'll happily reply. Or even if you guys want, I'll host a Zoom meeting in the future. But please remember, go out and vote. And if you're in the 81st, go out and vote for Jeffrey Doc Feld. Thank you very much.
Scott Flax.
Well, as everyone said, thank you. Putting on these forums is important to allow the voters to learn more about the candidates, but also for the candidates to learn more about what the voters need and what the voices are that are out there. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised here in Hampton Roads. I've lived here my entire life except for going away to school, and I came right back home because I knew this is where I wanted to raise my family. I'm married also to a teacher. She's a professor at TCC. She has worked at NASA and studied global climate change. She teaches physics and astronomy. She's my go-to resource on many, many things, but especially on the environment. In doing the research to get ready for this forum, I ran across the quote from the Constitution. It's interesting that in our Constitution, Virginia Constitution, it states, "To the end that the people have clean air, pure water, and the use of enjoyment for recreation of adequate public lands, waters, and other natural resources. It shall be the policy of the Commonwealth to conserve, develop, and utilize its natural resources." This is in the heart of it. This is our Constitution. This is what we should care about. Caring about our environment for ourselves, for our children. I thought it was very special that you guys opened your meeting tonight with the quote that you did. So it's not just about our duty to our future generations, but it's our duty to our past generations as well. So it is important for who we vote for. I hope you live in the 82nd, that you vote for Scott Flax. You live in the 81st, you vote for Doc Feld. You vote on the 21st, you vote for Kelly. All of us will be the stewards that you need us to be, and we can't wait to represent you in Richmond next year.
Thank you all for participating this evening, and a special thank you to you for recognizing that we desire to be a resource to you. So, we work hard to stay on top of these issues, and we're part of a statewide coalition, the Virginia Conservation Network. So we have partners who are experts on all of the different environmental issues that might come before the General Assembly. And we really do seek to be a good resource for you and a source of accurate, scientifically based information on all of the different environmental topics that come up during the session, because it comes fast and furious, and nobody can be an expert on everything. So thank you for recognizing that. And also thank you very much for participating this evening. We will be back here next week, next Wednesday, with the candidates from the 83rd, 84th, and 85th districts. Same time, 6 o'clock, and 6:30. And we'll have the YouTube recording of tonight's forum on our YouTube channel tomorrow, and we'll be sharing it on social media and through our weekly emails. And we encourage any of our participants tonight to please share it with your friends and neighbors and coworkers. We all need to be informed voters when we go to the polls. So thank you again, and everyone have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you.